Hello everyone and welcome to The No Show. I'll be your host Nathan Orenstein and today I'm going to be ranking the top 10 movies of 2025. When all was said and done, I thought 2025 was a pretty great year for movies. It was admittedly very backloaded and there weren't necessarily a ton of great options in the mainstream, but that just meant you had to be a little more patient and maybe go out of your way to find the good ones. I ultimately saw 95 new releases this year, and I feel like I did a pretty good job of keeping up with everything that might possibly have a shot at making this list. If you're curious about what I saw, I'll leave that list down in the description below. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get right into the top 10. At number 10, I have The Life of Chuck, directed by Mike Flanagan. Based on a short story by Stephen King, it follows an ordinary man named Chuck through different stages of his life as he experiences loss, love, and whatever else life throws at him. The Life of Chuck is the type of movie that could easily be described as corny, and I wouldn't really blame you. It's really about living your best life and doing what makes you happy, even if it means going against the grain and doing your own thing. It's ultimately Flanagan's direction that brought it all together for me, bringing an almost childlike wonder to the portrayal of this one man's life experiences. It's a beautiful film, even if it's a bit cheesy, and it honestly had me on the verge of both happy and sad tears for a good portion of the runtime. Chuck, like I said, is a pretty ordinary guy, and that relatability made this film about the human experience all that more effective. Despite the lows that this movie does go to at points, it's ultimately a very uplifting film, and one that I would recommend to just about anyone. The Life of Chuck is currently available to stream on Hulu. At number 9, I have Train Dreams, directed by Clint Bentley. Based on a novella by Dennis Johnson, it follows the life of a logger in early 20th century America and how that life is affected by grief, by love, and by the simple passage of time in an era where change was happening rapidly. As you can probably see, Train Dreams is sort of paired up with The Life of Chuck in a sense, as I see them both as fantastic films about the general human experience. Train Dreams is much more of a quiet, dramatic film though, mostly following a very solitary man played masterfully by Joel Edgerton. His dangerous career as a railroad worker and then a logger has forced him to confront death multiple times, and that's before he finds his personal life being affected by it as well. It's not so much a film about making the best of what you have, but more how we go about living with grief and the thought that death can be around any corner. And how do you continue to exist in a world that's constantly changing and leaving you in the dust? It's not necessarily a film that's uplifting by any means, but it is a film that's content with life as a whole, including all the potentially negative experiences it comes with. It's all brought together with what is easily the most gorgeous cinematography of the year, as it serves to remind you that you ultimately are a small part of this beautiful planet we exist on. It's a film that's isolating and comforting at the same time, and one that, again, feels universal. Train Dreams is currently available to stream on Netflix. At number 8, I have Bugonia, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. It's an English-language remake of the 2003 South Korean film Save the Green Planet, and it's about two young men who kidnap the CEO of a major company, believing that she is an alien sent to destroy planet Earth. Bugonia is a pitch-black comedy, following in the footsteps of Lanthimos' other great films, but this one weirdly feels more grounded in reality than a lot of his previous work. Yes, there's an absurdist edge to all of it, but this also feels distinctly of its time, touching obviously on the conspiracy-obsessed, but also on the so-called loneliness epidemic in America. It makes Jesse Plemons' character, the leader of the kidnapping duo, one of the most interesting characters of the year for me, and his ever-evolving power dynamic with Emma Stone's kidnapped CEO character is incredibly interesting as well. They both give two of the most intense and darkly entertaining performances of the year, which allows this largely one-location, relatively simple story to come to life. It's a film that always leaves you guessing, and that always feels like it's on the verge of exploding into something bigger, and that tension is only further supported by the dark comedy that could only land in such an absurd, intense film. Simply put, it's one of the most purely entertaining films I saw all year. Bugonia is currently available to stream on Peacock. At number 7, I have Jay Kelly, directed by Noah Baumbach. It follows Jay Kelly, a famous actor who bails on his upcoming movie to travel to Europe to see his daughter and attend a tribute for himself. The trip allows him to reflect on his life, particularly on his relationships, his legacy, and his regrets. I seem to be much higher on this film than most, but I absolutely love Jay Kelly. It's a deeply compelling dramedy about a celebrated actor whose public adoration contrasts sharply with his private guilt, regret, and fractured relationships. His impulsive trip to Europe is reflective for him, but for his manager, his publicist, and the rest of his team, it's a destructive nightmare that they're forced to clean up the wreckage of. It's a tug of war between Jay doing what he feels he can to repair his self-image and his relationships, and the reality of the situation, preventing him from truly getting closure and the healing he feels he requires. The film balances a loose road trip structure with rich internal conflict, supported by confident direction and sharp self-aware writing. George Clooney is perfectly cast too, embodying the role with charisma and depth, while Adam Sandler's dramatic performance as Jay's manager is the real emotional anchor of the film. Jay Kelly is a relatively light watch, but its ability to maintain that breeziness while still digging into its characters and their problems is its biggest strength. Jay Kelly is currently available to stream on Netflix. At number 6, I have The Secret Agent, directed by Kleber Mendonça Filho. It's a Brazilian film that follows a former professor caught in the political turmoil of Brazil's military dictatorship in the late 70s as he attempts to flee persecution and resist an authoritarian regime. The Secret Agent is a slow burn of a political thriller that really makes you feel like you're there in late 70s Brazil. It looks incredible, the characters all feel so real and authentic, and the story isn't necessarily concerned with getting you from point A to point B as quickly as possible. You exist in this world with these characters, and the story comes very naturally, despite it being relatively dense when all is said and done. The film truly explodes in its final act, though, while managing to tie all its loose ends up and bringing a real finality to its story. Wagner Moura masterfully plays this intelligent and frustrated man who is merely trying to survive under the military dictatorship, and I think his smooth, reserved confidence in the face of oppression makes him an easy character to root for. Smooth and reserved really describe the film as a whole, with its seemingly effortless presentation and its ability to tell such a big story in this unassuming package. It's an approach that captures the political corruption on display so simply and effectively, making for one of the most memorable political thrillers I've seen. The Secret Agent is still showing at select theaters. At number 5, I have Hamnet, directed by Chloe Zhao. Based on the novel by Maggie O'Farrell, it's a largely fictional story that dramatizes the marriage between Agnes Hathaway and William Shakespeare and the loss that inspired Shakespeare's play Hamlet. Hamnet is one of those movies that feels like it's designed to make you cry. Its depiction of loss and grief is overwhelming at times, and Jessie Buckley's performance as Agnes is exceptionally powerful. This is a movie you're watching for the emotional heaviness, not really the plot, and I think it absolutely delivers on that front. Chloe Zhao's direction is so tender and raw, and it lets both the quiet and the loud moments speak for themselves without ever feeling forceful. I've heard complaints that the first act is a bit slow, but I thought it was one of the most enchanting moments of romance I've seen all year. And the finale, without spoiling anything, is one that I can't stop thinking about, and it ties up the film beautifully. This obviously isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I think anyone remotely interested in dramas owes it to themselves to check it out. Hamnet is still showing at select theaters. At number 4, I have Marty Supreme, directed by Josh Safdie. It follows Marty Mauser, a young table tennis player living in 1950s New York who's trying his absolute best to make it big by doing whatever it takes. Marty Supreme is a jolt of electricity that genuinely feels like an instant classic. Josh Safdie of Uncut Gems and Good Time fame has brought his trademark, anxiety-riddled, frenetic approach to the story of a 23-year-old brash asshole who's convinced himself that he will be the greatest table tennis player in the world. Timothée Chalamet gives my favorite performance of the year as Marty Mauser, who is exceptionally charming, but also completely selfish and unwavering in his pursuit of greatness, no matter how many people he brings down trying to get there. And boy does he do a lot trying to get there. Yes, this is a movie about table tennis, and there are some fantastic table tennis scenes, but this is really a movie about Marty going to hell and back in New York City as he desperately tries to scrape together money to get to a tournament in Japan. The countless subplots are spilling over each other in a way that's both overwhelming and endlessly entertaining, and watching Marty try to navigate this nightmare odyssey he's found himself in is exhilarating. But at its core, it's a film about the pursuit of greatness and its cost, and what price some people are willing to pay. For as much of an asshole as Marty is, it's hard not to root for him through his incredible highs and equally incredible lows. And the energy of the film through its direction, editing, and score makes this feel like the ultimate film for dreamers. I know it just came out, but I've thought about this film way more than I'd care to admit. Marty Supreme is showing in theaters nationwide. At number 3, I have Sinners, directed by Ryan Coogler. Sinners tells the story of twin brothers in the Jim Crow South who open a juke joint, only to find themselves and the people inside threatened by a group of vampires. I'm going to describe this film in the same way I have all year, and that's that it feels like it's on fire. Not a jolt of electricity like Marty Supreme, but like a burning fire that gets bigger and bigger with each passing minute, and you can almost feel the heat coming off your screen. Coogler's blend of music and racial persecution and vampires is definitely weird on paper, but it works so well that you almost forget how ridiculous it really sounds in theory. This film has a palpable energy coming from its incredible score, its passionate performances, its bold cinematography, and the richness of its story. It's hot, it's sweaty, it's sexy, and there's vampires. And even then, the film has the audacity to actually have a meaningful voice about oppression, cultural identity, and community. And even if you choose not to engage with any of its many themes, it's still a damn good time and easily the best horror film of the year. Sinners is currently available to stream on HBO Max and Prime Video. At number 2, I have Sorry Baby, directed by Eva Victor. It follows a young college professor named Agnes through a few years of their life. They experience depression following a sexual assault incident, and they have to learn to get their life back on track. The most incredible thing about Sorry Baby is how digestible this film is despite its obviously very serious subject matter. It never makes light of it, but it also never lets it become a black hole that sucks all the personality out of the film either. The hero of the film is Eva Victor, who shines in their triple role as writer, director, and lead actor, all for the first time no less. They're able to perfectly nail the right tone by being in control of all three of those things, and the film ends up feeling so effortless and natural because of this. In fact, it's kind of a black comedy of sorts, with Agnes's character often leaning into dry gallows humor to cope with the trauma. Sorry Baby focuses more on the in-between moments of dealing with trauma, shining a light more on Agnes's progress with coping and moving on, rather than dwelling on the traumatic event itself. We see them living out their normal life, or at least trying their best at it, and there's a real honesty here that you rarely see in films. It's a strangely comforting and fun watch, despite some obvious moments of discomfort, but Eva Victor doesn't feel the need to force any sort of feeling on you as a viewer. Its greatest strength is its authenticity, and I think its ability to depict PTSD in such a way makes it all the more powerful. Sorry Baby is currently available to stream on HBO Max. And finally, at number 1, I have One Battle After Another, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Inspired by the novel Vineland by Thomas Pynchon, it's about an ex-revolutionary named Bob who's forced back into his old life when the corrupt military officer that was pursuing him 15 years ago resurfaces, this time pursuing his teenage daughter. Put simply, One Battle After Another is the most tightly crafted, purely entertaining film I saw all year. It's always moving at a great pace and never feels like it's stalling out across its over 2.5-hour runtime. It's mostly a big chase film about Sean Penn's Colonel Lockjaw chasing Bob's daughter, about the military chasing Bob, and about Bob chasing Lockjaw to save his daughter. It's all gas, no brakes, and there's tension from start to finish. Colonel Lockjaw is a terrifying villain, and Sean Penn delivers one of my favorite performances of the year. In contrast, Bob is kind of a washed-up stoner now, and watching Leo DiCaprio in this almost pathetic sort of role is extremely funny. The film in general is surprisingly funny, usually due to the crap Bob gets himself into, but for some of its scathing satire as well. The anchor of the film, though, is Chase Infinity, who plays Bob's young daughter, and watching her learn about this life her parents had while confronting a danger she's never dealt with is kind of sad, but she's also a total badass. I've barely scratched the surface of this film and why it's so great, but I gotta cut myself off sooner or later. It's a massive film with so much going on, and you should just experience it for yourself if you haven't already. One Battle After Another is currently available to stream on HBO Max. I hope you all enjoyed my list of the best movies of 2025, and hopefully you got some new recommendations out of this as well. And of course, I'd love to see your own list down in the comments below. I hope you have a great end to 2025, and I'll see you all in the new year. I've been Nathan Orenstein with The No Show. Thanks for watching.